Good afternoon, and welcome to the Mission Impossible Bike in Any Weather webinar. So my name's Amanda Simmons, and I am the Transportation Demand Manager at UNC Chapel Hill, and I'm going to be your host today. Thank you everyone who has joined so far. I think we have some more people joining as we speak. I'd like to give a special thank you to our regional chambers, our business membership organizations, and our cycling community that help spread the word to your members about this webinar. Your assistance has helped us make this group remarkably diverse and a true representation of our community. So today's session is being recorded, and we're going to share that recording with you usually about 24 to 48 hours after this has ended. All attendees are being muted during the presentation. And attendees are encouraged to ask questions throughout the webinar. You can use the Q&A button located in your Zoom toolbar. When we transition to the question and answer portion of the webinar, attendees are welcome to ask questions with your camera on. So if you would like to ask your question in person, please just indicate that when you post your question. And also, we have enabled live transcription services as well as subtitles, and those can be shown by accessing the live transcript option in your Zoom toolbar. So I'm really excited about today's topic of bike in any weather because I am also a cyclist, and I frequently ride my bike as part of my commute. So I ride my bike to the bus stop, and then I put my bike on the bus rack, and then I ride the bus onto UNC's campus, and then hop on my bike again to get to my office. And that gives me prime parking right inside my office. The weather can be a factor in how I commute. So on that note, I am very fortunate to have our guest speaker here today, and more on that to come. But if you're new here, I want to tell you about the Mission Impossible series. It's a quick 60-minute discussion with experts on topics that you want to know about. And we've had some wonderful discussions in the past. I'm glad that we are adding this bike in any weather webinar to that list. So be sure to visit the website gotriangle.org/MI to learn more. And you should see that link in the chat to access that. Thank you, Paul, for posting that. GoTriangle is hosting today's Mission Impossible session. So I want to make sure you know about the services that are offered. GoTriangle's employer services offers transportation expertise and complementary assistance to businesses, residential communities, and commercial properties to give them a competitive edge and to help improve transportation amenities and commuter benefits. And these services and programs have significant impacts on our commuting patterns, our traffic congestion, our personal health, and the air quality in the Triangle. Our grant-funded services and programs and materials are provided through a partnership of municipalities and public transportation agencies. The services and outcomes are referred to as Transportation Demand Management, or TDM. And again, GoTriangle is the host of this session with Jamie Gaskill, which will be our presenter. This session is meant to be an overview of bicycle safety best practices for cyclists in various riding conditions. The webinar is not all-inclusive of North Carolina bicycle and pedestrian laws, nor does it serve as a directive of planning for individual cyclists or organizations. The advice, graphics, images, and information contained in this webinar are presented for general educational and informational purposes and to increase overall safety awareness. It is not intended to be legal, medical, or other expert advice or services, and it should not be used in place of consultation with appropriate professionals. So on that note, I want to introduce our presenter today. Jamie Gaskill is an active transportation professional at Colorado State University, known as CSU. She is a League of American Bicyclists coach and a League certified instructor. Jamie is a dynamic leader with more than 20 years of experience changing lives through education, events, staff, and volunteer management, academic research, and program development. Jamie led the effort to start the Bicycle Friendly Driver Program, which is a groundbreaking initiative that has changed the way bicycle-related education is taught across the country. In her current role, she works with university employees at CSU to connect them with optimal transportation options and inspire them to utilize active transportation. In addition to transportation, Jamie has worked in industries such as utilities, public health, and outdoor retail, implementing behavior change and educational programs. And Jamie holds a bachelor's degree and a master's degree from Colorado State University. So on that note, I want to pass it over to Jamie. Take it away, Jamie.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction, Amanda. And I also want to really extend my thanks to GoTriangle and the whole committee that's put together this amazing series of webinars. And it's truly an honor to be here to teach this topic today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for my slide deck to give you all some visuals along the way. So let me just give you an idea about our path ahead. So our path ahead, I will be covering some general reasons to ride. I will talk about some rules of thumb and factors to consider when bicycling in any weather. And then I'm going to give you some tips for each of those types of weather that you might be encountering when you're pedaling out there. But before we do that, I want to get to know who's truly in our virtual room today. So you all filled out some questions when you answered some questions when you registered for this, but I want to know who actually showed up today, who's here. So if you wouldn't mind answering the poll, that would be fantastic. Ooh, it's looking like shrimp cocktails more popular than I thought. Love it. All right. We're at 88%. Got a few more people. If you don't know, you can just enter shrimp cocktail. It's good. It's tasty. All right. You want to go ahead and close the poll? Awesome. And you can share the results, Paul. So, you know, it looks like we've got kind of a large spectrum of folks, and I'm really excited to see that. Looks like a lot of you have tried riding in various conditions, but you're really looking for some new tips. So I hope to give you some of those today. And for those of you who just like the shrimp cocktail, I'm so glad you're here too, because I think it's important that even people who don't ride understand these things so that we know, you know, what to expect when people on bikes are on the roadways. Okay, so let's dig into it. So here's some of my favorite reasons to ride. There's many more than this. There's many more than this, but here's some of my favorite reasons to ride bikes in general, and two that I really want to call out. One is the fact that bicycling creates community. It's an amazing opportunity to connect with other people. And in fact, I've even met lifelong friends because I was commuting to work. I can't say commuting to work on my bike. I can't say that I've done that same thing in my motor vehicle. I didn't stop at a stoplight and strike up a conversation with the motorist next to me, but that has happened on my bike. So bicycling really is a community builder. So that's one of my favorite things about it. And then the last one on that list is probably the most important. It's actually really, really fun. And even biking in any weather can be really, really fun. And so my hope is that after today, you'll learn to embrace all kinds of weather conditions and make it fun. And in fact, here's some general rules that we want to keep in mind when we're biking in any weather and things that you have to do. You really do need to make the commitment to try it out. You're never, ever going to make the change. You're never going to be able to dial in your system because everyone's unique when it comes to biking in any weather, unless you actually give it a shot and try it out. So give it a shot, make the commitment, even if it's a small trip, so that you can try out your own system. Plan ahead, have the gear that you need to do these things. And you probably actually already have the gear. You probably don't necessarily need to buy a bunch of new stuff. But if you do want to buy a couple of key pieces, that's fine, but have the gear that you need ready. Check the weather. And when I say check the weather, that means not just on your phone app, but also step outside. Step outside the door, get a feel for what it's really like before you make your decision to get on your bike and start pedaling. Another thing I really recommend is test your routes. Know where you can go with the various conditions, because if you're riding a new route for the very first time when there's 6 inches of snow on the ground or there's ice, it's not the best time to test out that route. So know your route options before you really get out there. And then plan your backups. I know that Amanda's going to mention a couple of resources that you have, but there are other options that you can if you need to bail. That's okay. So what are your backup options if you need to bail, or even if you're a primary bike commuter like me and you need to have another option like taking the bus or catching a ride from somebody else that day, have those in place as well. Dress for the conditions and the changing conditions. We were just talking before we launched the seminar, the webinar, about the fact that the weather can swing, from morning when it's chilly to when it warms up later in the day. And now maybe you need to actually take some of those layers off and you have to carry them home. So what is it that you have in place to be able to carry those layers home with you? And then choosing your route is super important with these different conditions, and I'm going to talk more about that. And then once you're out on your route, knowing how to handle your bike is an important concept, and I'll talk a little bit about that too. And then your superpowers. I believe that bicycling gives you superpowers. And one of them is your ability to manipulate how traffic behaves around you by how you position yourself on the roadway. So sometimes it might be your best option to use your superpower and to take the lane and make people wait behind you while you navigate a difficult corridor to make it safer for yourself. So I'm going to I'll highlight that a few different times in this presentation about your superpowers. And then the last thing is give your bike some love. If you give your bike love, your bike's going to love you back. So I'll talk quickly about some maintenance stuff at the end. So these are the factors that I take into consideration every time I go out on my bike when it comes to riding in any weather. When we're talking today, I'm going to focus largely on the top 6, the ones on the top there. I just mentioned some superpowers. I'll talk a little bit about bike maintenance, but then the one I do want to mention before I dive in is the facilities at your destination. And your facilities at your destination are things like if you have a shower at work, or maybe you have a covered bike parking, or whatever that might be. Think about those things that you have at your destination that you can take advantage of, and think about how that impacts your planning for riding in any weather. So I want to do another poll before we get into the tips about the different weather types and get a feel for what is it that's most intimidating to you? What kind of weather are you most hesitant to ride in? Looks like we're a few more respondents here. Awesome. Give it a couple more seconds, Paul, and then let's go ahead and review the results. All right, so it looks to me like what I kind of expected is that the colder weather seems to intimidate more folks than any other kind of weather. So cold snow and ice takes the icing on the cake, so to speak. And it says 63% of you find that to be the most intimidating. So the good news here is that that's the one I'm going to actually focus on the most. I kind of suspected that might be the case. And so you'll notice that the presentation has a lot about that. And what I do like about talking about cold snow and ice too is that if you can navigate those situations, and the rain, I would argue that rain can also be challenging, then you can really take those concepts and transfer them to the rest of your riding situations. So let's dive into cold snow and ice, and what are we looking at? What should we do when we're heading out in these types of conditions? The first thing I'm going to do is start looking at how cold is it and how much precipitation is expected. This gentleman in this picture that I took a picture of in Winter Park, Colorado, probably looked out the door and thought, I got to get somewhere on my bike today, and there's some snow and there's probably more coming. So hopefully he had a plan in place for how he was going to get home after he, rode. This was sometime in the morning. I think we were walking to breakfast. So, and how is that going to change throughout the day? And then has there been something that's been happening in the last few days or overnight that's going to affect your travel? So like a freeze thaw cycle, so that now you have, extra conditions to deal with. So you want to take those into account. When it comes to what kind of bike to ride, I say ride what you have. Okay, ride what you have. But I will mention that there are some bikes that are better than others when it comes to riding in the snow and ice. Now, this picture on the right here is my son, Skylar. And my son, Skylar, rides his bike to school almost every day. And on that particular day, he took off on his pretty skinny tired bike, and there was about 6 inches of snow on the roadway. And he discovered pretty quickly he wasn't going to get there. using the skinny tire bike. So I loaned him my fat bike. My fat bike will be featured a number of times here in this presentation, but I loaned him my fat bike and he made it to school just fine. So bikes with wider tires and that have the ability to have lower tire pressure, air pressure, tend to do a little bit better. Now, if you live in a place that has a lot of ice and icy conditions, studded tires might even be an option for you. Now, I would consider that very optional and probably the exception, not the rule for most people, but could be an option. Your brakes are important to think about. Again, ride what you have, but just know that some brakes are better than others for these kinds of conditions. Disc brakes are the best. They tend to stay the cleanest and have the most power when they get wet and gunky. But in having brakes, even like this bike here on the right, the green one, it has space for the debris to clear. So what you don't want is the debris to kind of collect around the brakes because then you lose your stopping power. So looking for something like that can be optimal as well. Fenders are key in these really wet and mucky conditions. I was showing earlier, this is the jacket that I wear to cycle commute in the mucky conditions. I wore this morning. It's snowy and mucky and gross here right now. And that white jacket that I ride in pretty much every day stays clean because I have fenders. Okay, the fenders keep the muck from coming and spraying up onto me. And it also helps keep my drivetrain clean by keeping the grime and stuff from spraying as much onto my bike. You can see that you can do everything from spend almost nothing on fenders and make your own to spending a little bit more money for some permanently mounted bolt-on fenders. Now I have the permanently mounted bolt-on fenders for 2 of my bikes, and one of my bikes has the quick release style fenders that I like to use. I have a lot of bikes. And then when it comes to clothing and accessories, this is really where it becomes unique to you. So ride whatever bike you have, but now you're starting to really kind of dial in your system and figure out what's going to work for you. I mentioned before, try to use what you have, but ultimately your biggest goal is to not be cold, but not be sweaty. If you get sweaty, you're going to be cold. So try to dial your system so that you don't overdress. In fact, you could start out a little bit chilly. That's probably better. And you really need to just experiment with your own system. So what works for me might not work for you. And you're going to be considering things like, what is the weather? How far do you have to ride? What kind of pace do you need to ride? What kind of hills do you have to climb? Those things are going to make an impact on how warm your body is. And then layers are key. And my number one rule when I'm talking about riding in the cold is to avoid cotton. It just gets wet and stays wet and it makes you cold. So let's talk layers for just a second. When we're talking layers, what we're talking about is 3 different things. Our base layer, what I'd like to see you try is something like wool or a synthetic material or silk. No cotton on your base. If you're going to wear cotton, don't have it be your base layer. Okay, and then your mid layer I recommend something like down. This is actually oftentimes what I wear on my outside if I don't need waterproof, but that can be a great mid layer as well. And then fleece is also a good insulator. Your outer layer, I would prefer in general, if you can, wear something that's wind and water resistant, not waterproof, unless you really need the waterproof. And the reason I say that is because when you put a waterproof garment on, it tends to breathe less. Even Gore-Tex. Gore-Tex is breathable, and things like Gore-Tex are breathable. But I tend to find that the things that are water resistant tend to breathe better, which can really help you to manage your temperature better. And then when we're talking about arms and legs, arms, if you want to add some arm warmers, that can be a great option. Legs, I tend to wear tights. I wear my rain pants. I'm wearing my rain pants a lot right now to help block the wind. And then, wind resistant pants, those all work. And then I actually find that when it's just chilly out and I'm not really having to deal with the moisture so much, that I'll actually wear like tights and then put a skirt or maybe some shorts over the top just to keep my thighs a little bit warmer. I tend to get really cold on the fronts of my legs, and I think probably most people do when they're riding. And so I just wear that extra layer over my thighs that helps it make it a little bit more comfortable. And then we want to start protecting some of these really vulnerable parts up here. So this is a picture of me and my partner and my colleague at Winter Bike to Work Day a few years ago. And you can kind of see our systems that we used. So when we're talking about the neck and face, I recommend either a balaclava or a buff. I'm wearing a double buff system in that picture with my orange helmet. My partner's actually wearing a balaclava, and then my colleague's wearing a thicker hat and a buff. And so what I recommend is something, up here, and then something you can pull up over your face if you need to, and even, getting it so that you can pull it up over your nose. And then on your head, you could wear either like a skull cap or a thin hat. You could put a helmet cover on. You have that second buff like I have there. So I actually put my buff on first, or my hat on first, and then my second buff over that, so that it kind of goes up like this and will stay up on my face when I want it to. And then you want to protect your eyes. I recommend either glasses or clear glasses or even goggles, especially when there's precipitation coming your way. And then your hands. Your hands are sometimes the most difficult thing to keep warm. Most importantly, make sure that whatever you're wearing or whatever you're using, you can shift and that you can break. That's really important. So sometimes thinner full finger gloves are going to work best. I actually wear mittens. These are my mittens that I biked in today. They're super, super bulky, but I can actually shift in them because I have grip shift on the bike that I ride most often. And so that works for me. But you can layer it. You can wear lobster mitts. You get the benefit of mittens, but you can use your fingers to break, which is really nice. You could use bar mitts, like you can see in the picture on the left there, where you can actually stick your hands in there and it blocks the wind and some of the precipitation, which is nice, but you have more dexterity. You can wear thinner gloves with those, so that you have more dexterity for shifting and braking, which is nice. Now, if you're a person who gets really cold hands, I might recommend chemical or electric hand warmers, or you can even make little rice bags that you could pop in the microwave, put those in your gloves to help keep your hands warm as well. And then when we're talking about our feet, that's another area that tends to get cold pretty easily. I recommend wool or synthetic socks. Seal up those vents in your shoes, either with toe covers or shoe covers. You can purchase winter cycling shoes that have more insulation. I sometimes just wear my hiking boots or my snow boots when it's really cold outside. And then there's also the plastic bag trick. And what I mean by this is that you can actually put your foot that is in your sock inside of a plastic bag, then put that in your shoe, and then tuck the plastic of the remaining plastic up into your pant leg. And that can provide you some extra insulation, and then also can add waterproofness as well. When you're riding in the cold snow and ice, your route choice is key. Definitely check those weather conditions. Make sure you know what it's like. Is it actually icy? Is it just snowy? What's going on out there? Step outside your door and check it out. Know that your snow route's probably different than your regular route. I normally ride neighborhood streets, but when it's snowy out, I take major arterials because they tend to be cleared sooner. Which is one of the points that I make here. Have those options, dialed out ahead of time so you know where you can go. And then make sure that you plan some extra time. Your ride's probably going to take longer than it normally does. My ride when in the snow takes anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes longer than it normally does. And then if you have some local resources, check those out too. In my town, we can actually see which routes have been plowed first, so that I can say, hey, I know that one's been plowed. I might choose riding there first. And then know that your higher volume streets are likely to be cleared first, and consider your bike and bus combo options. So maybe you're going to ride a shorter distance, jump on the bus, either lock your bike and jump on the bus, or maybe you can put your bike on the bus and then you can get to your destination that way. Now, once you're out there, your handling comes into play. So this is when it's really important to have your handling skills dialed. Most importantly, look ahead. What's coming up in front of you? What are you going to have to navigate, and plan ahead and choose your line. It's better to ride a straight line than to be weaving in and out. Okay, that's more predictable. That's a superpower. That's a superpower to be able to, be a predictable rider. Avoiding sudden movements is key in these slick conditions, okay? And if you do hit those slick conditions, ride it out. Just ride it out. Go easy on the brakes. Go easy on the brakes, because if you start, squirreling around, you're going to slip and you're going to fall. And then know your snow and your ice. So some types of snow are going to be better to ride on, and as well as ice. You can see the difference between, you know, the different types of snow and ice that you're going to be riding on. So try to choose your line accordingly based on where it's safest to ride. And then watch for black ice, especially near curbs and when you're turning. That's when you really get hit by the black ice. So make sure that you're going easy on your turns and keeping an eye out for those sections. And then you can always walk if you need to. I do see some people, some questions and things coming through, and I think Amanda's going to be compiling a lot of these. And I might go ahead and finish the deck, and then we'll do all the Q&A at the same time, just a heads up. So thank you, and keep the questions coming so we can talk through them at the end. Okay, a few other things to think about, a few other special circumstances. This is actually a picture on the left, right by my kiddo's school. And I told you about superpowers. This is where we use our superpowers. And we tend to take the lane here because we could push our bike like this little kiddo's doing here, or we can use our superpowers and take the lane. And you can kind of see, you know, you can't see bike lanes, you can't see any of that stuff. But what we need to do to keep ourselves safe is position ourselves accordingly. A few other things to think about. When we have these kind of snowy or icier conditions, we tend to have lower visibility. And we tend to forget to hydrate ourselves. So make sure you stay hydrated, and you can even turn your water bottle upside down like I've done on my fat bike here, which helps to keep it from freezing up by where you're drinking. And then just know your bailout options. A few other things. Okay, now let's jump to the rain. So when we're in rainy conditions, the questions that I start to ask myself is, how cold is it with this precipitation? How much precipitation are we actually looking at? Is this just a sprinkle, or is it going to be a downpour? Is it going to change throughout the day? Is it going to be raining all day, or is it just going to do the little 5-minute bursts and then it's gone? And then is it also windy? Because that's going to affect how I dress. And then the bike, in terms of your bike, again, remember, just ride what you have, but goodness, if you can, put fenders on there. That really helps to keep that spray from getting on you and even more on your drivetrain. And then disc brakes, again, are going to be best for these wet conditions. I use a similar layering system in the rain as I would for the other cold conditions. And that's why I talked about the cold one first. I'm just going to dial the under layers, but then I'm going to probably put a waterproof layer on the top. If it's really going to rain, I'm going to put a waterproof layer. And when I wear a waterproof layer, I'm looking for something that's breathable, because I'm going to be generating heat when I'm pedaling. And so it serves not only as wind blocking, but also that waterproof. And then if it does have a hood and I'm going to use the hood, I say hoods stay put when you turn your head, meaning it comes with you. Because if your hood stays here and you turn your head and you're looking to scan and now you can't see, that's a safety issue for you. So you want a hood that can really travel with your head. And then a visor for keeping the rain out of your eyes can be helpful. And you can look at this cape that this person here is wearing. It also covers the hands and can help shield the feet a little bit, which is nice too. So a few other pieces of gear for you to wear. A helmet cover can be good for keeping your head dry. You could wear a waterproof cycling hat with a visor like this person's doing in this picture here. Skull cap for warmth can be helpful. You could even carry an umbrella like the person that we saw with the first rain picture. Now, if you're gonna do that, it's not something I would recommend normally, but if you are gonna do that, make sure you're a really good one-handed bike handler, because that can be a safety issue. And then for your eyes, again, clear glasses or goggles can be helpful. It's better to have those droplets on the outside of your glasses than in your eyeballs. So I like to wear some sort of eye protection. And then a waterproof layer on your legs is key. Use an ankle strap if you have something that's kind of baggy, so that you make sure you don't get that caught in your chain. For your hands, I really like waterproof gloves in the rain. Having wet hands is a terrible experience, and it makes it harder to handle your bike. And start with warm hands. So what I mean is, like, putting warm hands into gloves is likely to keep them warmer. Putting cold hands into gloves is not very likely to warm them up very much. So start with your warm hands and consider the cape option for protecting your hands as well. And then for your feet, I like either shoe covers. I have waterproof socks like the ones you see here. Those are great for keeping your feet more comfortable. You could even get some waterproof shoes. And then that plastic bag trick that I talked about earlier can be great for helping keep your feet dry when it's really, really wet out. Now, handling does come into play here with the rain. So look and plan ahead again, control your speed. And the reason I say that, especially when you're turning, is because you can slide out. The pavement can get really slippery. And so braking evenly is good. Go easy on those turns and avoid puddles. You can see this poor person on the right here didn't avoid the puddle and couldn't see, especially in these deep puddles, couldn't see the obstacles that were underneath and took one heck of an endo. So I don't want that to happen to you. So try to avoid the puddles if you can, and remember to walk if you need to. And then a few more things, again, just like it was in the snow, plan a little bit more time. Remember that there's less visibility for the people that you're sharing the road with and for yourself. You may encounter vehicle spray, so be prepared for that. As always, use your superpowers, make yourself visible and predictable out there, and then use your bailouts if you need to. All right, let's warm it up a little bit. So let's talk about riding in the heat. So when I'm getting ready to go ride and it's warmer out, I'm asking questions like, how hot is it? And how hot is it going to become? How humid is it? A humid hot is very, very different than a dry hot. A humid hot's going to feel hotter. It's going to zap you even more. And then what's the air quality like? So here in Colorado, where I live, we have had a tremendous issue with wildfires the last few years, and our air quality has paid a price. And I've had numerous days where I simply couldn't go riding because it was the air quality was so bad. And if you're a person who has allergies or something like that, what kind of allergens are you going to be breathing in these warmer conditions? Keep that in mind and factor that into your choice and how you ride. And then in the heat, route choice does matter too. Remember, you're going to be working harder on the hills than on the flat terrain. So if you need to kind of chill it out a little bit, maybe choose a flatter route that day. And then is there shade where you can take breaks? That's always a nice option as well. A few other things to think about. If you have a choice of bikes, your heavier bike's going to be more work to pedal. So it's going to heat your body up faster. So keep that in mind. And your brakes can actually overheat on long descents, especially on hotter days. So if you're out on a ride that has some longer descents, make sure that you're taking care to notice what's going on with your brakes. And then make sure that you're hydrating. That's super important. Have a way to carry water with you. And I even encourage you to be consuming some electrolytes to replenish that key nutrition in your body. And then keep your bike out of the sun whenever you can. So when you're storing your bike, keep it out of the sun. And then if you're taking a break, if you can keep your bike out of the sun so your seat doesn't get hot and that kind of thing, that's nice as well. And then clothing and accessories. These folks on the left are probably a little overdressed for a really hot day, but you can use your clothing to be your sunscreen or actually wear some sunscreen. And then I always like to wear eyewear for debris and bugs and things that might be coming my way. I'll talk briefly about wind. This is my least favorite of all weather types to ride in personally. I try to think of it as resistance training. It's resistance training, Jamie. It's a good thing. But a few things to keep in mind. In terms of your bike and your equipment, the more you can streamline your bike, the better. Having a lot of stuff on your bike makes it like a sail, and it makes those wind gusts even more dramatic. So keep your bike as streamlined as possible. If you have an e-bike, it can really help you to fight against that wind resistance. If that's not something you enjoy, if you don't want the resistance training, an e-bike can be a great option. And then do the same thing with your clothing, streamline your clothing. And then having a wind resistant front is kind of nice to help to block some of that wind from your body. And then I always wear eyewear, especially in the wind, because of the debris and the things that can get blown into my eyes. And the wind just dries my eyes out. So it's kind of nice to have that eye protection. And then in terms of route choice, choose a more sheltered route and choose a route that has wider shoulders and better bike infrastructure so that you can get a little further away from traffic. And remember that faster moving traffic can actually create wind gusts, that push-pull effect, especially with higher profile vehicles. So the route that you take, could be even windier because of the traffic too. So keep that in mind. And then, with your bike handling, if you do have that option, move a little further away. Be prepared for those wind gusts. If you need to, because the wind's really coming at you, gear down and spin a little bit of lower gear so you're not having to work so hard. And then if you're with friends, use drafting, set up a drafting system so you all can conserve a little bit of energy. Another weather condition I want to talk about is fog or low visibility or even riding at night. So some special circumstances when you might see this is dawn and dusk. You also might see this with the sun glare, especially in transition seasons, when the sun is just at that right angle, that it's creating difficulty for people to see, especially motorists, and especially you motorists who don't clean your windshields. So clean your windshield. And you as a bicyclist, remember that people who don't clean their windshields really can't see you when the sun is at a certain angle. So keep that in mind. And then precipitation can also be one of those places that really affect visibility of folks out there. So in these cases, choose better bike facilities, choose wider shoulders so that you can give yourself a little more space when visibility might be less. And at night, choose more well-lit routes so that you can see and so that people can see you. And then in terms of equipment that you can ride with, a front white light and a rear red light. Now, sometimes the law says only a reflector. I say use a light. A reflector is not enough in my mind. Use a red light. And then you do need side reflection as well, so you can be seen from all angles. And your clothing and accessories, I say wear bright clothes and wear something that's reflective at night. The more lit up you can be, the better. Lastly, I'm going to talk about a tiny bit about bike maintenance. It's almost Valentine's Day. Give your bike some love. Keep your bike happy by cleaning it. A clean bike is a happy bike. When you come home, especially if you're in those wet, yucky conditions, brush it off, give it a little love. Make sure that you're paying special attention to your drivetrain, number one, and then your brake pads and your rims to make sure you can stop, especially if you've been out when it's been wet and mucky. That's really important. Take care of your chain. Keep your chain clean. Use a wet lube if you're riding in really gunky wet conditions. Use a dry lube if you're biking in drier, dustier conditions. And then whenever you can, try to avoid leaving your bike outside. If you can park it indoors, that's ideal. Now, I know not everyone can do that, but if you can get it out of the elements, that's helpful. So I want to finish with a poll. So I just gave you lots and lots and lots of information, but I'm hoping that one or two of these tips might have resonated with you. And so based on what you heard today, what's one of these, conditions that you think you might be willing to try based on what you heard? Awesome, I see them rolling in. Looks like a lot of you are thinking you might try the wet stuff. I like it. Cold snow, ice rain's kind of at the top right now. A few of you are saying, you know what, I might do the heat. And some of you still love the shrimp. You're welcome. You're welcome. I'll bring it next time too. Great. Do you want to reveal for us, Paul? Awesome. Cool. Well, with that, I do want to say thank you so much to GoTriangle, to Amanda, to the planning committee for the Mission Impossible series for having me. Thank you to all of you for taking the time to come to this webinar. It's really an honor to be here for this conversation. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. I think Amanda's going to mention a few things to you, and then we're going to jump into the Q&A.
Great. Thank you, Jamie, for that really informative presentation. I really enjoyed it. So before we transition to the question and answer portion of today, I want to discuss just a few items really quickly. So Jamie mentioned knowing all of your transportation choices. That's especially true in weather conditions that make bicycle riding more challenging. So we've got some trip planning tools available. So you can use Google Maps or any of the Maps apps on your phone that come installed. And then Transloc, that is a way to track your bus, but also a way to plan your trip and get notifications. Now, to make sure your bus is running in bad conditions, sign up for service alerts through each of the transit agencies or call the regional call center. That number is listed there at 919 is the area code 485-RIDE. And then you can find a carpool partner if you'd like, or any kind of commute buddy at Share the Ride NC. That's strnc.org. And while you're biking, if you see a problem, report a problem. So Durham, Orange, and Wake County all have dedicated See, Click, Fix pages, which is also an app that you can get. But most cities and towns have a way of reporting potholes or issues with bike lanes and sidewalks through their official websites. And one more thing, in 2021, we reached out to cycling groups throughout the region to learn more about them because we realized that cycling group identifiers like gender, sexual orientation, age, race, and experience are a means of connecting our community. So to help encourage like communities, we launched trianglebikegroups.com. We're going to put that link in the chat. This is a resource to help people find cycling groups. So if you are interested in finding a cycling community, or if you want to add your own cycling community on this website, be sure to visit trianglebikegroups.com. And as we move into the question and answer portion, if you could please type your questions into the Q&A box in the Zoom toolbar. And if you want to ask a question, just raise your hand. If you did not put it in there and you want to actually speak, raise your hand through Zoom, and we will go ahead and turn you on. So I'm going to go ahead and kick off one of the questions to you, Jamie. The first one that popped up, it's just kind of to know what Colorado is like. So how many months do you have to drive in the snow and ice in Colorado?
Awesome. Thank you so much for that question. So, honestly, the last couple of years, it's been more often in Fort Collins where I live. It tends to kind of fall and then melt pretty quickly. But lately it's been sticking around. So we tend to see, snow starting in kind of November and then going through February, March time. So we have a lot more of that to contend with than the folks in the GoTriangle area. But I do think it's important to understand again that some of those concepts of, learning how to navigate those conditions can certainly, translate to some other conditions that you might see over there as well.
Great, thank you. And what kind of goggles are best for wearing when you have glasses? Says I would prefer to protect the lenses.
Yeah, that's a really great question. They do actually make over the glasses goggles. So you can actually buy ones that fit, especially if you're a person who wears prescription glasses and you want to be able to wear those, you don't have contact lenses or whatever, you can buy goggles that will fit over your prescription glasses. So just look for those, and that can be a really great option for folks.
Okay, great. In the Triangle, we tend to get snow and it becomes black ice. Would I use the same bike gear for black ice as I would for snow? For example, studded tires. Yeah,
again, the ice is another really, really difficult one. And sometimes ice would be the option where it depends. Black ice is a little different than some thicker ice too. So I think if you're riding in some, thicker, chunkier ice, the studded tires become an even better option than with black ice. Black ice, it probably doesn't even matter if you have studs, you're probably slipping out anyways. We had a day here recently that was a freezing rain, and I think you all had one kind of similar time frame. And that was a day when I didn't ride. I simply chose to take another option. It was even difficult walking to the bus that day. So, there are some days that I would say have your backup options and maybe even your backup to your backup, because riding might not be your best option. But if ice is a regular thing in your area, having studded tires can be helpful. It really can. So, and again, you could even have a wheel set that has tires on it that have the studded tires, and then you just switch that out when you need it. And hopefully you have some quick releases and that kind of thing to make that easy for you. But studded tires can be an option if ice is really frequent for you.
Thank you. And are bright colors important or safety best for visibility, a day, sunset, or night?
Yeah, in my mind, being visible is incredibly important no matter when you're riding. The more visible that you can be, the more aware people are. It's a superpower. So there's another superpower that you have when riding bikes, and it's invisibility. And when I say that, that there's a couple of examples of this, okay? One is when you position yourself in a way that you're now behind a vehicle or something like that, so now you're invisible to other road users. That's the kind of invisibility you don't want. And I also say at night, I call people who are dressed in dark clothing and they don't have any lights and stuff, I call them bike ninjas. Now, ninjas are cool, bike ninjas are not cool. So being as visible as possible at all times of the day is a really good thing. And a couple more points to think about being visible. Yes, wear bright colors, wear the reflective stuff. Keep in mind, some of you have those amazing front lights that are almost more powerful than my car headlights, okay? That's great and fine and all, but make sure when you're riding with those, you angle them down a little bit. You don't want to blind people, because if you blind them now, they can't see you. You just made yourself invisible again, okay? Because you just blinded them. So make sure you angle them down a little bit. And then one other thing I'll say about the whole visibility thing, when you're wearing reflective stuff or things that light up, there's a concept called biomotion. And biomotion, what it is the research shows that when you wear something on your body that moves, like it's lit up and or it reflects and it moves, like you put it on your leg or something and that thing is moving, the human brain registers that as that's a person and they can see it from further away. So wearing something on the moving parts of your body is also going to help bring more visibility and attention to you in those difficult to see conditions.
Excellent. Great answer. Thank you so much. We have another question. Do you have a recommendation on how a complete novice can learn how to bike in North Carolina? And we can actually, I know you are not in North Carolina, so we do have that trianglebikegroups.com website. So that's a great way to connect with people in the community who are biking around here, and they can help you learn the streets. And so if you want to check out that website, you can also reach out to GoTriangle. I think we've got the panelist here. If you want, we can put our information and help connect you with people in the area.
Yeah, and let me add, Amanda, can I add one thing to that as well? Yeah. So I love that you all have established this, bike group community list and as well. And so tap into a group that resonates with you. But also, I'm a coach with the League of American Bicyclists, and there's over 5,000 league cycling instructors across the country. And I travel around to teach in different places and that kind of thing. I'll be in Iowa City in June, which will be fun. But take a class with a league cycling instructor. We have a curriculum called Smart Cycling that can really kind of get you to the basics about becoming more confident riding. And one of the classes that I enjoy teaching most is an adult learn to ride. I've taught people as old as 80 years old to ride for the very first time, a person who's never pedaled a bike who's 80 years old. So those are tap into some of those local resources and your league cycling instructors to learn what you need to become a more confident cyclist.
Thank you so much. And that is a great tip. So hopefully we can get that link in the chat. I think we're working to put that for the classes that you just recommended. Do you have any tips for those who wear prescription glasses to prevent fogging while wearing a balaclava?
Yeah, fogging is definitely an issue. And I think that what I find is the key is to try to leave a gap. Now when it's super cold, that can be really difficult. And I do have a product that there are some products that you can put. I use them on my goggles. I haven't used them on prescription glasses. But I actually have used, some products that you can also put on goggles or on glasses too, I would imagine, that can help to kind of minimize the fogging. But what I find is just providing a gap, a little bit of an air gap to help that issue can certainly help. And, as we're wearing our masks and stuff all the time now and wearing glasses, to try to make sure that your glasses sit on top of it can also help sometimes if it seals up better, the moisture's not coming onto your lenses. So I would say look at a defogging product, look at trying to seal it up as much as you can, or create a gap in between the two, that might help as well.
Excellent, thank you. And I saw Catherine put the link in the chat. She's one of our league's certified instructors, or at least working on it. I think she's completed now. Yes, thanks for recommending that. So we have just a comment that there's a person here who has a granddaughter at CSU, and they've done cycling many times, and Colorado has fantastic bike lanes all over, really wide, and wish North Carolina could have some better bike lanes to prevent serious accidents. So hopefully we can work on that. And so NCDOT, I think they've got a complete streets training coming up soon. So I think we are working to, we aspire to be like Colorado. And then we have some links going through the chat. We are going to compile all of those. Looks like we've also got a link to bikewalknc.org. And I'm trying to make sure I'm catching all of these. A new bicycle safety quiz to help cyclists, drivers, and everyone on the road. So that link is also getting posted. I think everybody can see these. And then somebody else said, I've been lucky and never had a flat tire. Other than attending or becoming an LCI, are there resources that can help me learn the basics on how to change a tire?
Yeah, that's a really great point. And if you're going to learn any bike maintenance, I would vote for one, know how to lube your chain, okay, and how to conduct an ABC quick check. So an ABC quick check is a check I do before every single ride. You can Google it if you want, but it just kind of helps you run through the kind of safety things to check. And one of those things is your chain, making sure that it's clean and ready to roll. And your air, whatever. So ABC. And then the other thing is, out on the road, I would argue that knowing how to change a flat is probably one of the most important things that you can do. Now, besides taking a class, there's tons of YouTube videos out there. So if you aren't able to attend a class, I would encourage you to, Google how to change a bike tire a flat tire, and you can certainly learn the steps. Now, it's really, really nice if you can take a class and if you can do it hands-on, because there are definitely some tips and tricks that you'll learn with your own bike that that somebody can help kind of work you through. If you have them right there next to you, kind of teaching you, oh yeah, you couldn't pop the bead off the rim. Here's a secret and how you can do that. Sometimes I fight like heck to get mine off of my tire off of my rim. So knowing those tips and tricks is really helpful, but I'd say start with the internet. The internet has a lot of great resources, and then if you'd like to learn more, then you could certainly look for an instructor or class.
Awesome, thank you. And on those lines, does the tire pressure on a bike need to be adjusted for winter riding?
So that depends, okay? That depends. And so let's remember that the pressure in your tire is going to change with the weather. So when it gets hotter out, the air in your tire is going to expand. When it gets colder out, it's going to compress. So the ABC Quick Check, the very first thing that you check on your tire is air. So you're going to give your tire a squeeze. You may be even going to use your, if you have a pump with a gauge, you're going to check and see if it's in the range that's printed on the side of your tire. Now, if you have tires that you can run at a lower pressure, and when I say that, those are wider tires, okay? If you're riding a road bike that has really skinny tires, riding that, even that, a slightly lower pressure can be risky, because you're now going to get a pinch flat, which is where, your tire compresses and then you get a couple little holes in it. We don't want that. So you want to make sure that you're not riding your tire at too low of a pressure. But if you have wider tires and you can drop your pressure a little bit, it's going to give you more surface area to grip slicker conditions. So thinking about if you have you ride a mountain bike and you happen to have a tubeless tires, so one that is more like a car inner tube, it doesn't have a tube in there, it's kind of essentially sealed to the rim, you can run that at a lower pressure than you can one with a tube without risking a flat. And so that might be a way to gain you some traction. So do you have to do it? No. Is it going to help make your ride a little bit smoother and grippier? Yeah, it probably is. So it kind of just depends on what kind of bike you're riding and what kind of conditions you're in. But I would say, definitely check it every time and then make a judgment call based on the type of bike and how wide of the tire that you're using.
Great, thank you. And get a lot of questions coming in quickly. Let me answer them as quick as possible. How do I keep my bicycle weatherproofed in advance, and how do I care for my bicycle during the winter?
So weatherproof in advance, I would just say, you know, I'm not 100% sure what you're referring to there, but I would just say keeping it clean in general is really, really important. And then, you know, making sure that if you're riding often in wetter, grimier conditions, you're maintaining it even more often. And when I say maintaining it, I mean, I'm talking about keep it clean. And I have a colleague of mine who actually takes her bike into the shower with her. And she literally gives her bike a shower when she's been, you know, riding out in the wetter stuff more often. I personally haven't showered with my bike. I love my bikes, but I haven't done that yet. But, you know, really keeping it clean is super important, and making sure that you're getting it serviced on a regular basis. If you're not capable of doing it yourself, take it to a shop and make sure that they're doing, they're doing their run through on a regular basis. If you drive a motor vehicle, you know, you have to keep up on that maintenance too. It's the same with your bike. Give your bike some love. Make sure that your cables and housing are working well. So your brakes are working well. Make sure that things are clean and operational. And if they're not, take it to somebody who knows what they're doing so that they can fix it and make sure that it's running well for you, no matter what kind of weather you're riding in.
Great, thank you. And we might have to answer some questions after by email, but just to see if there's anything else that anybody feels pressing, go ahead and ask it now. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and wrap up this session. I do see what can cities or towns do to make cycling a better experience. And I think that one might be a hard one to answer, especially for somebody from Colorado. So I'm not trying to ignore these, but want to give the presenter the questions she can answer the best. And do you have an online bike clothing site to recommend?
You know, I'm not going to name anyone in particular, but I do. I often pay attention to reviews, and I'm looking for, depending on what I'm looking for, I'm going to look for the particular characteristics of something. So if we were talking about, you know, buying a layer that's going to be really versatile for, you know, cold to, you know, I need some water resistance to it, I'm gonna shop around. So for me personally, I'm not gonna just do one or another, but I would say, you know, if you can, maybe you're buying your stuff, I would consider buying your stuff locally, because you're going to get some local advice from folks. And then if you are buying stuff online, maybe, you know, because you need to try things out sometimes, if you have a website that has a more generous return policy, that can be nice. Because, you know, you might try something and it really doesn't work, or it doesn't fit quite right, or something like that. So I don't have a particular one website that I go to. Honestly, I shop from many, but I also try to shop from my local shops here, because oftentimes they know about a product that, you know, that now I can't live without. So
yeah, I like to hear you say shop local. So
yeah, no, I think that's important. And you want to, you know, you do really want to keep your bike shops going strong. I used to work in outdoor retail, and it is super important. And honestly, that to me, that personalized service is worth something. So I do think it's important to hit up your local resources when you can, and then tap your friends on the shoulder too. Hey, what do you like to use for this condition? Yeah. What kind of gloves do you like to wear? What, you know, whatever it is. Do you run hot or do you run cold? I tend to run cold. What do you recommend? So ask those questions, and then get those personal recommendations. Sometimes those are the best.
Thank you so much, Jamie. And if anybody posted a question that we didn't get to answer, especially if you did it anonymously, please put your name to us in the chat so that we can get back with you after the meeting, and we will try to follow up by the email for the rest. But we would like to get your feedback on today's webinar. So we're going to post a survey. If you don't mind answering questions, please complete the survey for a chance to win a free bicycle helmet provided by our partners with North Carolina Central University, as well as a bike goodie bag provided by our partners with Go Chapel Hill. And then keep an eye out for an email for today's meeting recording, and also links to upcoming webinars from Bike Walk NC, Oaks and Spokes, and a bike-friendly driving video. Thank you again, Jamie. Her contact information is displayed if you want to get in contact with her. And then I also want to do one quick thank you to our planning committee who helped organize this webinar. That includes myself, Lynn Cohn from the town of Chapel Hill, Carolyn Kagia from NC State University, Michael Bailey from NC Central University, and then the GoTriangle team of Kim Johnson, Patricia Crane, Callie Britt, and Paul Straw. So again, everybody go to gotriangle.org/MI so that you can get more information about all of these webinars. And thank you again, Jamie, and thank you all who joined us today.
Thanks so much for having me. Thanks, everyone.